Is doing well. This is the Canadian Foreign Policy Hour. I'm Yves Engler, coming to you from Jojage, which has long been a meeting place of various First Nations, otherwise known as Montreal. And the Canadian Foreign Policy Hour is a critical look at Canada's role abroad every Monday. And despite the name, it is now it's now a half an hour affair, not an hour affair, because we have a campaign meeting starting at 6:30 right after this that anyone who wants to come is welcome to, and there'll be an interesting announcement tonight about moving forward on things. There was a report, La Presse, about Canada's going to fail to hit its climate greenhouse gas emission reduction targets for 2030 and 2035. That's not a surprise. We knew that, and Mark Carney is doing everything he can to downplay the importance of those targets and push it out to further down the road, which is just these targets are already insufficient reductions, and basically the tar sands is blowing all the successes that have had in other areas. The expansion of the tar sands is just leading to ever more greenhouse gas emissions, which Canada is among the top per capita. Chris Alexander, who did this who submitted this forged document at a House committee, is that about 6 months ago, 8 months ago, maybe a year ago now, about Puglisi, claiming that David Puglisi, the Ottawa Citizen reporter, was a KGB agent. And it's now been shown that these were forged documents. He appeared at a House committee yesterday or a couple of days ago as if nothing happened. So he was making these lies, former minister in the Harper government, targeting a journalist, and doesn't seem to have been, held account at all, considering he's providing expert testimony once again. On Sudan, I published a piece that talked as some terrible massacres in the west of the country, and there was a fair bit of attention for that in the last few days. I published a piece that talks a little bit about Straight Group or Strike Group. I don't know how you pronounce it. Their operations in the UAE, providing arms to the RSF, Rapid Support Forces, that are considered responsible for a bunch of these massacres. And I did a piece that kind of looked at a little bit of the history of Canada. Canada dispatched about 400 troops, voyageurs, to help the British maintain control of Khartoum in 1884. What was ultimately an unsuccessful mission. And then a decade later, Percy Gerard, he's considered the second most important British officer. He's from Montreal, trained at the Royal Military College in Kingston, who he built the railway that enabled the British to conquer Khartoum, bypass about 800 kilometers of tough Nile River, and provide, have heavy weaponry and the like. And it was a big slaughter. Ultimately, the British and Percy Gerard would go on to be the governor of northern Nigeria and the governor of British East Africa, essentially what's Kenya today. There was another Canadian who was governor of Ghana so there was Canadians were governors of three different British colonies in Africa. I talk about that in my Canada and Africa book. But Percy Gerard played this role in conquering Sudan. It's just a little bit of history, and then also when the Americans blew up the pharmaceutical factory in Bill Clinton in 1998, Chrétien and our great humanitarian foreign minister Lloyd Axworthy justified this very clear criminal act by the Americans. The Uyghur rights Project, Company Project, I believe it's called. They put out a statement this week urging the trade minister to appoint a new ombudsperson in the core, the corporate ombuds position. And then so did some labor group. I'm not sure how I feel about that. The corporate ombudsperson was a good initiative. It was initially designed, as I've talked about multiple times, to target Canadian mining companies. The mining sector was able to broaden that into a corporate position more generally, which in an abstract sense is a good idea, but in a concrete political sense is a bad idea because it was designed to deal with this very specific issue, which was Canadian mining companies' global abuses. And so by broadening it to other corporate sector, you actually diluting the politics of it. And then they basically morphed it into this tool to target China, and that's why the Uyghur Rights Initiative is complaining about it. They turned it into a body to sort of demonize China and claim that there was slave labor and the like, which I think is pretty thin. So I don't know what to say about what the good position is on this position. The ombudsperson, in theory, is a very good idea, certainly in the mining, even in a general sense around Canadian corporate abuses. But it's more or less powerless, and to the extent that it does have power, it will be when it's targeting corporations that are in some way disaligned with the geopolitical perspective. Obviously, the case of China is a clear example where there's corporations that go against the sort of target China kind of disposition. Canada and the Philippines signed an agreement on joint battle readiness to do drills and expand different security alliances to deter aggression. This is viewed as targeting China. That was signed a day or two ago. Conversely, there's been a sort of rapprochement with China, and the Chinese ambassador in Canada said that there could be a tripling of trade between the two countries if there was more of this rapprochement. We'll see where that goes. I've been meaning to do a video clip criticizing the NDP's position on China because they very much chose a morally incorrect and strategically incorrect position to take this demonize China, to follow the U.S. empire in demonizing China. And I think that it's with everything that's happened with the canola on the prairies, criticism of Canadian policy on that, the fact that liberals are shifting policy, the fact that Trump has kind of prodded many countries to sort of become closer with China because of his erraticness and his different tariffs and the like. So for a whole bunch of reasons, the kind of rapprochement with China makes sense from a business and corporate standpoint. Now, I also think from a electoralist standpoint, the NDP's made a mistake because there's about 2 million Canadians of Chinese descent, and there are, of course, many critics of the Chinese government among those 2 million. But there's also a lot of people, despite the media portrayal, who either support the Chinese government, are kind of on the fence with the Chinese government, and even maybe some who aren't particularly keen on the Chinese government, but they don't like the xenophobia that's instigated by this sort of target China kind of dynamic that spills on them. So I think that NDP's made a strategic error, electoralist error, beyond a moral error in its positioning on China. And there's interesting possible explanations for that question, which I'm not going to get into at the moment. There's a report from the PBO, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, titled "Planned Capital Spending Under Canada's Defence Policy 2025." And what they find is that the planned capital spending over the next 20 years, between last year and this year, increased by $108 billion from 213-ish to 323-ish. I don't got the exact numbers in front of me, but more or less that. And that's a huge increase, 108 billion in capital expenditure over 1 year shift, which is partly tied to just how radical Carney's military spending increase is. And it's important to note with capital expenditure, generally it's considered around 2 to 3 times the amount life cycle. So if they're talking about spending 323 billion on capital expenditure in so-called defense over the next 20 years, the full cost would be something towards $1 trillion, because the fighter jets cost about 20 million up front, but then you got to spend another 50 or 60 billion on upkeep, on new bases to handle them, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're talking about a huge increase, and this is just a new example, and there are many of these of just how intense the military spending increase is from the Carney government. And again, this is all on top of what was already a doubling of the budget, military budget, from over the decade of Trudeau, in actual dollars, and going from about 1% of GDP to about 1.4, and now it's being pushed up to 2, and the plan is to go up to 5%. Another indicator in this direction that was reported this week is that apparently the military has created a tiger team to work on increasing the reserves by 1,300%, from 28,000 today to 400,000. A massive increase. Hard to imagine that that could be achieved without some form of draft. And again, this is just another indication of just how much increase in military there is, and we're going to see this in the budget that's going to come down tomorrow. It's a very clearly a riches for the military-industrial complex, partly to placate Donald Trump, and then it's going to be, it appears, austerity for everyone else. And it's going to be interesting to see the reaction of the NDP specifically on this question. In the Ottawa Citizen article about the huge expansion in the reserves, or planned, hoped expansion, they mentioned that the Director General of the Air Force, Air and Space Force, warned a couple months ago of a potential war with China and Russia, and then said that that war would start between 2028 and 2030. And they quoted another thing from the former Chief of the Defense Staff saying something similar back in 2023. So we're not getting, it's not being stated really aggressively everywhere, but military officials are kind of repeating this notion that we're on the cusp of a full-fledged open war with Russia and China. Now, is that just justification for increasing military spending? Is that justification for other such things? Maybe, but these things do take on a little bit of the life of their own. The Jewish Federations of Canada and United Israel Appeal board members were in Israel last couple of days, and they met with Canada. They went to the Canadian Embassy, and they talked about strengthening ties with the genocidal Jewish supremacist state. Now, the federations and the United Israel Appeal are, formally tied to the Jewish Agency, which is a sort of parastatal organization with, direct ties to the Israeli government. It would be not a substantial exaggeration to say that they act as Israeli, agents in Canada, act on behalf of the Israeli government, that the Jewish Federations, which are the sponsor of CIJA, which run the United Israel Appeal, which is the biggest charity, registered charity donating to Israel. It's raised, I don't have numbers in front of me, but it's in the couple $1 billion in the last couple decades. I think it's about 100 million a year that they raise for projects in Israel. There's a I didn't actually read it. I didn't see the physical paper yet of the National Post, but Alan Dershowitz had a piece saying that our enemy is now Canada, because the Carney government recognized Palestine. Uh, Alan Dershowitz, he has very close relations with Irwin Cotler. That's kind of gone on a bit under the radar, but Irwin Cotler in one interview talks about the first person he called when he became justice minister, when he was appointed justice minister, was Alan Dershowitz. I think he might have even told the Globe that he called Dershowitz before he called his wife. Um, and So there's an interesting dimension there, but that Kotler needs to be, because of course Dershowitz is right at the middle of the Epstein scandal. I wrote a piece linking going over the ties between Kotler and Epstein. Uh, there's a few. Kotler has a few other ties to the Epstein affair. Uh, Carleton University this week put out has proposed some sort of what they call an impartiality policy for the different departments at the university. So the sociology professors would be allowed to individually sign some petition, but the sociology department wouldn't be able to sign a petition. And they've done lots of these, and for like, students who've been detained in Turkey or I don't know wherever, all kinds of different issues. They've done this. Different departments have assigned things, but basically all because it comes back to genocide and the lawless Israeli state and its lobbyists in Canada. So because I guess some department maybe signed some statement criticizing genocide, they want to outlaw the ability of all departments to do this across the board. And according to even the Ottawa Citizen article, it was kind of being done on behalf of donors to the university. Uh, there's the CEJA. There was an action alert that we instigated on CEJA and the NDP boycotting CEJA, which was successful. We got it kind of flows out of this report that the Jewish Faculty Network did that Avi Lewis was one of the co-authors of. And I saw Tyler Levitin from former head of IJV complain that Avi said it didn't call for a blanket boycott of CEJA, even though it sort of does call for a blanket boycott, not exactly a blanket, but more or less a boycott of CEJA. And anyways, we did this action alert where we emailed all the different NDP leadership campaigns. We both to Neil Johnson and um, I'm totally blanking on his name, Tony McQuail. Uh, they both put out pretty good statements calling for a boycott. Avi put out a statement responding to it that sort of reinforced the report, and this is a good thing. This is a step forward. This is definitely getting the NDP talking about boycotting CEJA is a very positive development. Now, it's not a blanket issue at all within the party, but even that percolating among leadership candidates is a very positive development. Another positive development is this week the court threw out CEJA's case against the University of Windsor, which conceded a certain amount to the encampment. And that was I think it was the biggest victory that we got in Canada. The encampments won some victories other parts elsewhere in the world, but I think it was the biggest victory in Canada. And the court threw out the CEJA's effort to stifle that, so that's a good development. In the Montreal mayoral race, there's kind of a both sides, a positive and negative. The positive is that Projet Montréal and about 100 other candidates signed this anti-apartheid statement. The bad side is that Soraya Farada, the former Liberal minister, who I challenged many times, she won, and she was very much tied in with uh, uh, the she's very much tied in with Zionist kind of forces. So that's an unfortunate development. Another final thing I'll mention, positive development, kind of indirectly at least, the Maple published a story about the headline "Online Mentions of Canadians IDF Service Are Disappearing." So Davide Mastrice, who's been detailing all these Canadians who've been fighting in Gaza recently and in the Israeli military over the years, they all his information, or the vast majority of his information, came from different outlets boasting schools, boasting about their graduates going on and killing Palestinians, and boasting about their great graduates, this or that. And now they're starting to erase these links and edit the articles and take links down and stuff like that. So essentially, things are catching up to these those who were very recently boasting about their either their people connected to their institution, complicity in Israeli crimes. They're now, I guess, getting a little bit more skittish, which I think is a positive development. Obviously, we still haven't seen any prosecutions of Canadians who fought in Gaza, or for that matter, prosecutions of institutions or individuals that have been inducing Canadians to join the Israeli military. But nonetheless, it's still a positive. So we got about 8 minutes to do comments and questions. And go ahead. I don't know if Laura's here. 'Cause she messaged me saying that, oh, I think she is here. I see her. I will make her a co-host and go ahead. I think you're a co-host now, Laura. And I see Yuri hand maybe raised there.
Go ahead, unmute Mary.
Can you hear me, Eve?
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, Eve, I was thinking last weekend about those on the left, many whom I respect, who are hostile towards your campaign. Any more thoughts on that? Because for me, I'm just baffled that you have an entire industry in the left media in Canada, the independent left media in Canada, of people who spend their entire times complaining that the NDP is not democratic, that the NDP should be more left. And then you have yourself, backed by the NDP Socialist Caucus, and all of a sudden, these same people are concerned about the vetting process, and he should be sending this amount, and so your response to that, because it's so blood boiling to me.
I just did a piece that starts off with yesterday. Heather McPherson came out and said she supports. She called for a national housing emergency. She very much echoed our call for declaring a national housing emergency. Ours is partly designed to empower the government to convert the real estate investment trusts into co-ops, and that the Emergencies Act gives the government greater power to do that. But she uses this kind of same language. There's not many details, but she's using the same language. And so I just use that as a jumping off point and point out a number of instances where they followed they've kind of co-opted or taken the language or the positions we've been taking, and then take it to its broad logic, which is that the NDP leadership race, from the left standpoint, the principal thing the Canadian left wants of the leadership race is as a opportunity, where we're further empowered, because the voter to the NDP tend to be more to the left than the average. Where we're further empowered, we want to use it as a way to push the whole discussion to the left in Canadian, or to use the word of the overtone window, to push it what's considered acceptable boundaries. I don't know how you could possibly disagree with that point. Now, I could say there's two secondary points with the NDP leadership race. Some people have specific candidates they want to win, And then there would be other people who want the race to be used to bolster the NDP, and or some people who would want it to weaken the NDP and expose the NDP as being undemocratic or whatever. But the main, so there's you want some people want a specific candidate, some people have their motivation, fundraise for the NDP or weaken the NDP. There's but the main issue, the main use of the NDP race from a broad left perspective is as a opportunity to move the discussion to the left because of the dynamics of the race. What these people have done that you refer to, and a lot of people who call themselves very left wing, call themselves critical of the NDP, what they have effectively done is try to sabotage the ability to have that moving of the left that the NDP leadership race offers. It makes no sense. There's many of those individuals who have their personal reasons for not liking me. I've written articles critical of a lot of people on the left, right? There are many people who have, yeah, and a lot of people take. I've obviously done even more on people on the right, but right. So I think there's personal reasons like that, but these are ultimately should be inconsequential compared to the bigger picture. Now, there's other people who claim some specific political motivation. They'll say it's anti-Semitism. They'll say it's campism. They'll say it's Rwanda. They'll come up with they have different sort of elements to the justification or whatever. But none of these I don't see from a logical left perspective. None of this supersedes or is close to as important as the big picture question that the NDP leadership race offers an opportunity to move the discussion to the left. And these people have very clearly worked to undercut that. A lot of them, unfortunately, are doing this on behalf of Avi's campaign. There's obviously the NDP brass that has their own reasons. They don't see the NDP leadership race as an opportunity to move the discussion to the left. They see it as just something about strengthening the NDP, and they see me and our campaign as undercutting the NDP, whatever. Right? So, but it is I think quite remarkable to see how a lot of people have really just demonstrated themselves. I mean, many facets to it. But I think that's the big picture way of understanding some of this and how kind of egregious the activity is that basically they're undercutting the opportunity the left has, the rare opportunity, in this case, it hasn't happened for 8 years, to use this 6-month affair to
exactly. They're doing an own goal.
And you get into the details of it, there's still 5 months left. All these people panicking about like when you submit your documents or don't submit your documents. There's 5 months left, even as we're being excluded, even as we're being boxed out of official NDP stuff. We're having the ability to impact the discussion, the debate, and still these people on the left or whatever don't seem to care, or their desire for Avi is so great that they exclude principle or big picture politics or whatever.
Well, Eve, are you going to be able to actually like get on the ballot for the primary? I mean, are they going to be able to prevent you from even?
Most likely, that's the announcement later. I'm going to announce in a bit. Within a week, we're going to be submitting. We're going to be going for the formal submission within a week, and we'll see what happens. I don't expect the NDP to say yes, and all these people on the left that have joined in on the smears and all the ridiculous things about submitting your documents this day or that day, or they all of a sudden become experts in the rules of elections Canada financing, and all these people all of a sudden they've just found out that Rwanda, they don't even know where Rwanda is on a map, and they're complaining about my position on anyway, all of this stuff. All these people, if the NDP does block us, well, they all played some small role in legitimating it, and that's it is what it is. This isn't a fait accompli. We should be part of the race. Ultimately, it's on the NDP brass and the vetting committee to do what's right and allow us to participate in the race. But we can't be ignorant of the context, and there's all been a lot of smears, a lot of attacks, and all that. Even without all of this, it would have probably been difficult to force the NDP to let us in the race formally, but now it's even that much more difficult.
It's 6:30, Eve, so you have your meeting now.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Okay, thanks. Bye.